let's talk about Belle Burden's memoir, Strangers. Now, I want you to picture this, a marriage that feels so solid, so perfect, that it's actually symbolized by a pair of ospreys. You know, the birds that mate for life and come back to the exact same nest on your property year after year. That's the starting point here, a life that seems completely stable, completely safe.
But then, it all comes crashing down. On March 21st, 2020, right as the entire world is going into lockdown, her reality is just shattered. And it's not some slow, drawn-out thing. Nope, it's one single voicemail from a stranger that completely unravels every single thing she thought she knew about her husband.
So she confronts her husband, James, about the affair, and his reaction is pretty much what you'd expect. He promises it meant nothing, he says he's sorry, that he's committed to their family, and for a few hours, it actually seems like they might get through this. But less than 12 hours later, everything changes. The remorseful husband is just gone. In his place is this man with icy eyes and a cold voice who flat out says he wants a divorce, and then he just walks out. He leaves his kids, their home, his entire life. It's like a switch was flipped and he became a completely different person. So to really get what this memoir is all about, we're going to break it down into 3 key takeaways. We'll look at the illusion of intimacy, the fight to control the narrative, and what it takes to rebuild a life from scratch. And then, at the end, we'll figure out if this is a book you should add to your reading list. All right, our first big idea is this really unsettling concept that you can spend 2 decades of your life with someone and not actually know them at all. Think of their marriage like an iceberg. The author discovers that the life she could see, the one on the surface, was just the tiny, visible tip. Underneath all that was this whole secret world. James had secretly built up a massive fortune that she had no idea about. And what's really fascinating is she admits she chose not to know. She let him handle all the finances, trusted him completely, and that trust created this huge blind spot. And that brings us back to the ospreys. Her husband was obsessed with them, their loyalty, how they returned every single spring. And for her, they became this powerful symbol of their own permanent, secure love. But in the end, it was just an illusion. A really beautiful story she believed in, while a totally different one was happening right under her nose. Okay, on to our second takeaway, and this one is all about who gets to tell the story. The second James leaves, he starts rewriting their entire history. He tells this new version where he was never really happy, a version that basically lets him off the hook for everything. And so begins this battle for the truth of their marriage. This is where a crucial piece of advice comes in from her stepmother. She tells her to stop trying to understand his crazy new story and instead focus on her own. Put the spotlight on herself. And this is a massive turning point. It's a shift from being obsessed with his motives to reclaiming her own experience. And you can see that journey right here. She describes herself as someone who is always quiet, always avoiding confrontation. But this crisis forces her to become someone new. She goes from being silently confused to actually fighting back in the divorce, and finally to writing it all down, which is how this very book came to be. She basically insists on telling her truth in her own words.
And that leads us perfectly into our final takeaway, because this memoir isn't just about a marriage falling apart. It's about what you build from the wreckage. It's about that painful but ultimately freeing process of creating a brand new identity when your old one is just gone.
I mean, look at this transformation. The trauma forces her to change in these profound ways. The quiet, compliant woman who let her husband control the money becomes this fierce advocate for her own financial security. And maybe most amazing of all, the person who for decades believed she couldn't write becomes a published author. Her friends even say she seems lighter, happier, more herself than she ever was before.
And in the end, this hope she has for her children really becomes the core message of the entire book. It's all about resilience, not just surviving, but having the power to create something totally new and maybe even stronger from all those broken pieces.
So after hearing about these themes, hidden lives, taking back your own story, and this incredible resilience, who is this book actually for?
Well, ask yourself this. Are you fascinated by what really goes on in long-term relationships? Do stories about personal transformation and bouncing back from the absolute worst really speak to you? What if a memoir read more like a psychological mystery, where the big question is, who was this person I loved? If any of that resonates, especially the power of finding your voice and the messy way that love, identity, and money get tangled up, then this book is going to be a powerful read for you.
Strangers isn't a book with easy answers. Instead, it leaves you with this one haunting question. It makes you really think about trust, about intimacy, and about the deep, sometimes terrifying mystery that exists inside another person, even the one right next to you. It's the kind of story that will definitely stick with you long after you've turned the final page.